my channel. Today we're going to take another look at the challenge of Christ that Don K. Preston made up. And once again, he's not going to read the verse and he's going to misquote Jesus, and but he has to build a doctrine around this verse. A lot of people do that. They build a whole entire doctrine around a verse. But in this case, the Word of Faith preachers, they will do that to get money. In this case, Don is the 80-70 doctrine means so much to him that he will misquote Jesus. And this one verse, John 10:37, it's it's so easy, and yet he does not understand what it means at all. But anyway, we're going to take a look at it. Come on, Don, hurry up.
And good morning, everyone. Happy Friday morning to you, and welcome back to Now TV and Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I do appreciate you being with me. We are currently involved and have been for the last several years now a study of the challenge of Christ. Now, very quickly, just as a reminder, the challenge of Christ is found in John chapter 10, verse 37. Jesus said, "Do not believe me for my words' sake, believe me for my works."
No. Folks, I've read that so many times, it's pathetic. He has said that for almost 5 years now. Go to his YouTube channel and under the playlist, and it goes back nearly 5 years. He's been on this. He maybe read it once. It seems like a couple of months ago I pointed out he read it, but I think he almost read it, but not quite. But look at this, folks. Don said, he says, "Do not believe me for my words' sake, believe me for my works." Jesus in no way said that or implied it. Hear it again, John 10:37. If I do not do the works of my Father, do not believe me. Do you remember what he told John? Don references John 8 here in a little bit, but do you remember what we went over in John 8 when Jesus was telling those Jews that wanted to kill him whose works they were doing? They said, "Our father Abraham, we do the works of our father Abraham." And Jesus told them, "No, you're not doing the works of Abraham. If you were, you would know who I am, and you would believe me." He said, "You do the works of your father, the devil." And of course, yeah, that'll make them want to stone him even more. But John 10:38, Jesus goes on to say, "But if I do, though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and believe that the Father is in me and I in him." That's very simple, folks. If you look at a person's life, like those Jews that wanted to kill Jesus, they said, "We do the works of Abraham." Abraham wasn't an evil man. He might have had flaws, but he did the works of the Father. Abraham obeyed God. He left his homeland, went to a land that he didn't know where he was going. God told him, "I'll show you." And he had faith in God, and so he did what God said. That's what doing the works of the Father is. Not counting the miracles that Jesus did. Of course, he did miracles to prove he was a son of God. John 20, verse 20, verse 30. Let me look and make sure I don't get confused here, folks. But I've read this a million times, and I have to. I'm not one of those that can keep something in my mind all the time, and I don't memorize where something is as good as some people. John 20, verse 30. And many other signs truly Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and believing you may have life through his name. That's why Jesus did the miracles, to prove who he was. The works of the Father was uh, what people who followed Jesus do. Uh, if you follow the Father, you will follow Jesus because he was prophesied to come. And if you knew the Father, you would know Jesus. That's what Jesus was telling them. And in fact, when Don is confused in John 14 when Jesus was talking to Philip, he's confusing that with John 10:37 when he was talking to those unbelieving Jews. He's got it so twisted up, folks. And this is maddening to me because nobody's calling him out on it, and he's been doing it for nearly 5 years. To me, this basic doctrine he has built on this one misquoted verse, it shows me the rest of that hyperpreterist doctrine is to be avoided, marked and avoided, and thrown in the trash. Because if you cannot quote Jesus correctly in one verse, and you do that over and over and over for years, that's not good. But here in John 14, uh, Jesus was telling them, beginning verse 7, if you had known me, you would have known my Father also. And from now on, you know him and have seen him. Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and it is sufficient for us. Jesus said to him, have I been with you so long, and yet you have not known me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. So how can you say, show us the Father? Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father in me? The words that I speak to you, if I do not speak them on authority, but the Father who dwells in me does the works. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father in me, or else believe me for the sake of the works themselves. See, that's where Don is getting it all twisted up, and he don't even understand what he was saying to Philip. Most assuredly I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also. And greater works than these he will do, because I go to my Father. And whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask anything in my name, I will do it. See, folks, that's Don says Jesus is saying, if do not believe me, if I do not do something, but the point is, he's getting to 80, 70. If I do not do what I say I'm going to do, he'll Don will say that here in just a minute. Let's listen to him.
If I do not do the works which my Father has given me, do not believe me.
And that ain't what he said.
I've shared with you before how this challenge is unique to Christianity. Jesus was putting his very identity as the Son of God on the firing line.
Folks, he did that through the virgin birth. Everything about Jesus proved he was the Son of God when he came to earth. He is the Son of God. He proved it when he was manifested in the flesh, and everything about him. Not that he's going to come in 80, 70, as Don has been preaching for 5 years.
And he was saying, look, prove me wrong if you can. On another occasion in John chapter 8, Jesus was in the midst of a hostile audience. And he just turns to them as they're trying to find fault, as they're trying to condemn. And he says, which of you condemns me of sin?
That's in John chapter 10, too. In John chapter 8, he was, in John chapter 8, that's when he was rebuking them about his doing the works of the Father, and they were doing the works of their father. And but in John chapter 10, begin at verse 31. Then the Jews took up stones again to stone him. Jesus answered them, many good works I have shown you from my Father. For which of those works do you stone me? The Jews answered and saying, for a good work we do not stone you, but for blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself God. Then Jesus answered, is it not written in your law, I said, you are gods? If he called them gods to whom the word of the God came, and the scriptures cannot be broken, do you say of him whom the Father sanctified and sent into the world, you are blaspheming because I said I am the Son of God? See, folks, that's Don can't even get that part right. They call themselves God. We're of Abraham's seed. God had said we are gods. Jesus saying, I'm blaspheming because I'm saying I'm the Son of God. If I do not do the works of my Father, do not believe me. That's simple. Jesus was doing the works of the Father, teaching love, teaching patience, teaching forgiveness, teaching mercy, and performing miracles. All of that, all of it together was the works of the Father. If he had been coming in with a sword and killing people, kind of like the king that they expected, if Jesus came to build an army, to attack Rome, to overthrow the government, that's what they wanted. Jesus is saying, I'm doing the works of my Father, and which are totally different from what they were expecting. My dog Dipsy just shaking her ears real good, if y'all heard that. But she sits at my feet when I'm recording or whatever. But that's what the works of the Father. It's not about AD 70, folks. It's Don can't get this through his head. He's so concerned with what the atheists believe. Let's listen to some more.
Which of you finds fault with me? And they couldn't do anything. And so this challenge of Christ
But the thing is, in John chapter 8, he found fault with them and pointed out their faults. They were doing the works of their father, the devil, when they said they were doing the works of Abraham.
is extremely critical. Now, obviously, the atheists, the skeptics, those who do not believe in Jesus try to find fault with him.
Of course. And they still do. They always will, Don. They did from the beginning and they will till the very end. That's a fact. And there's nothing we can do about that. They will always be with us. Jesus also said the poor will always be with us. You know, we try to feed the poor, help the poor, which I am the poor. But that goes on and on and on and will until he returns. And no, he did not return and resurrect the dead and judge the world in righteousness in AD 70.
And I got to tell you, I
Yeah, tell us, Don. You've been telling us this for 5 years almost, and you have repeated the same thing over and over and over.
interact with atheists somewhat, not extensively, but it just blows my mind.
I'm not going to listen to what he's got to say about the atheists. I wanted to skip over to a place, if I can remember where it was at, uh, about 18. And bear with me, folks. He had said something. I don't even remember what it was, but I wanted to get to that. And he's repeating the same thing. If you want to know what he said between there and where I'm skipping to, go to either one of his videos on this challenge of Christ on Now TV every Friday. Go to any one of them and he'll repeat the same thing over and over, except every once in a while he comes up with a brand new anecdotal story that happened 10 years ago. And, you know, whatever, Don. I really don't believe you. Let me see if I can find what I was talking about.
Will be established. That's the establishment of the Messianic kingdom, the establishment of the Messianic temple. Now, I've already shown you, ladies and gentlemen, just go back over the last two or three videos.
Right, like I just said, if you want to know what I skipped through, just go back over any one of them and you'll find whatever it was he said.
That the Messianic temple was not to be a literal physical temple in literal physical Jerusalem.
Well, see, folks, this is simple stuff that Christians have understood from the beginning. We are the temple. Paul, the Apostle Paul, taught that. Don hadn't come up with some kind of profound new idea here. This is basic Christian doctrine. We are the temple.
I have shown you that Jesus Christ himself is the living chief cornerstone of the Messianic temple. The foundation stones of the temple of God are the apostles and prophets. Now, look,
That's right. That's all true right there. But there was something in there that he said that I don't even remember what it was he said, and I thought that's dumb. But he's worried all through this video. He's so worried about what atheists think of him and what the Muslims and Jews think of him. And literally, folks, he's headed towards the Israel only doctrine. It's fairly new, and he's blocked most of those Israel only uh, disciples out there because it's getting to him. They can argue with him over scriptures over that, and he don't know how to answer them because he's like John 10:37. He's got it so twisted up. He probably believes what he's saying, and those Israel only disciples have been chewing him alive. But he's headed toward that doctrine himself. Everything is about the promises to Israel. Remember, folks, the promise that God had first given Abraham, it was for us too. It wasn't just for the Jews. We were involved in those promises to Abraham, a land, a seed, and all the world will be blessed through that seed. That was a promise to all of us, not just the Jews.
look, folks, not only is this devastating against dispensationalism,
Well, I don't care
it
about
is
that.
devastating against the skeptics who appeal to this Christian doctrine, unquote, and who say, well, look, all these Christians over here, they claim that we're looking for a literal physical Jerusalem to be restored.
No, we're not. But I remember what that was he was talking about, folks, that the Bible does not teach anywhere that this physical universe will end. He says there's no such teaching in the scriptures. And I was working while I was listening to him, and first thing that popped in my head was Jesus talking about heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. He said, I came to fulfill the law and the prophets, and he did. He fulfilled the laws and the prophets and brought in a new covenant. And that's on the day of Pentecost. Peter preached the first recorded sermon that we know of, and like 3,000 souls that day were added to the church. Peter didn't preach the old law. He didn't tell them to obey all the statutes and ordinances. He preached the gospel of Christ, the good news. And I'm gonna stop here for a minute, and but I'll pick it back up. And I wasn't gonna make this too long, but I'm gonna have to stop a minute, look up some verses, and then get back. I thought it was towards the end of this, but it's not. It's towards the middle. But Don's talking about there is no teaching of the this creation being destroyed. There is none, and all through the Bible, don't you think it would be? Let me play a little bit of it so I won't misquote him or misinterpret what he's telling you. But he's saying this earth goes on forever as it is. It there is no end, and but there is clear teaching in the scriptures. He don't accept it, but it is clear.
Or the doctrine of the end of the Christian age, the end of end of human history.
Well, there is a end of human of this creation. There is an end to it. Now, if it's human history, I don't know. Well, are we still human when we go to heaven? That will be answered when we get there. Don can use his imagination to tell us how this is going to go on forever the way it is, but there is clear teaching that this is going to be done away.
If that was a valid doctrine, then given the fact that the Bible speaks so much about the coming of the Lord and the end of the age.
Well, it does. It does, Don. There was an end of the Jewish age. There was, but there is no end of the Christian, of the kingdom. The Bible doesn't speak of a Christian age. That's a term people like you made up. It's not in the scriptures. The old covenant was done away. That age is gone. Now there's an age coming that we're not part of yet. When Paul talks about the ages to come, we don't know what all else is coming, but we do know that this is going to be done away. Matthew 24:36 or 35. That's what I want to read. Go to Matthew 24. Heaven and earth, Jesus is speaking, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, but my Father only. That's pretty clear, Don. That's pretty clear teaching. And Second Peter 3, and Don mentions that in his video here. Folks, if y'all want to watch all of his video, that's up to you. But it's in through there somewhere right after uh, minute 9:34. He talks about this verse, how people have misunderstood it, and no, we have not misunderstood it. And I'm going to read Second Peter 3, go so far, but Peter compares the destruction of heaven and earth and compares it to the destruction of the flood. And then he says, but this time it's going to be burned up. It, there won't be nothing left. Beloved, I now write to you the second epistle of which I stir up your pure minds by way of a reminder, that you may be mindful of the words which are spoken before by the holy prophets, and that the commandment of us, the apostles of the Lord and Savior, knowing this first, the scoffers will come in the last days, walking according to their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning. For this they wilfully forget that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of water and in the water, by which the world that then existed perished, being flooded with water. But the heavens and the earth, which are now preserved by the same word, are reserved for fire until the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But, beloved, do not forget this one thing, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some count slackness, but is long suffering toward us, not willing that any should perish, but all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. Remember Matthew 24:35 or 36? No man knows that day or an hour. Well, that's what Peter's talking about here. It will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Heaven and earth. Remember Genesis 1:1? Do we want to know what heaven and earth means? Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Don says that is talking about the temple in Jerusalem and the city of Jerusalem. No, it's not. The Bible itself tells us what heaven and earth is. Now, their temple is where God would, under the old covenant, they saw that's where God dwelled. They couldn't go behind the most holy. God told them how to build it, and it was a type. It was not the true. We are the true temple. When Jesus was crucified, remember the veil was torn in two so people could see inside the most holy. We can enter the most holy. Don talked about the book of Hebrews quite a bit there at the end of this. We approach the throne boldly. Then, under the old covenant, only the high priest could go in there. We have a high priest sitting in there. He's making intercession for us. But Don says this is 2 Peter 3 is talking about Jerusalem and the temple. No, he's not. He compared it to the flood, the destruction that's coming. Remember, it was flooded to destroy. This time it's going to be done away. It's going to be burned up. And heaven and earth, not the temple in Jerusalem. What temple did Peter belong to himself? He was part of the temple of Christ. They taught what the true temple is. That's why I'm saying Don is headed towards Israel only doctrine. But anyway, let me get back to reading. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming day of the Lord, because of which the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, according to his promise, look for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. And that's what Don says is already here. The new heaven and a new earth, they don't, the hyper preterist folks, they don't have that to look forward to. They're in it. They're in the the new heaven and the new earth, because the old one, that's all been burned up. All that sin and unrighteous, ungodly men, that's all been done away, according to the hyper preterists. We just, this world has gotten so rotten, and we can't even have the Olympics anymore without them trying to mess that up. Got men boxing, beating up women in boxing ring, and making fun of that famous painting of the Lord's Supper. You know, uh, in a way, we've turned that painting into an idol, but it's to me, it doesn't bother my conscience. I think that's a great painting. That man was talented. Who was it? Michelangelo. But great painting, and they mock and ridicule it. And of course, it's that's not a painting that we're to worship. We're not to worship anything, man made. That is not Jesus and the apostles in that painting. That's a representation of what somebody thought they might have looked like. But anyway, y'all know what I'm saying. The world has gotten rotten. And to Don K. Preston, we're in the new heaven and the new earth where it says where righteousness dwells. It's as if the apostles didn't live Christian lives. The first Christians, they were living Christian lives in a world of ungodliness, just like we are. To them, to the hyper preterists, they were looking forward to the temple being burned up. Those Christians in Corinth and Ephesus who had probably never been to the temple, they were looking forward to when the Lord would come and destroy Jerusalem, sack Jerusalem, and knock down the temple in Jerusalem that they never went to worship in the first place. This hyperpreterism is a ridiculous doctrine, and it leads to atheism, and it leads to that new and improved false doctrine of it's called Israel only. That everything written in the scriptures was to the Jews, not us. They say the Gentiles talked about in the New Testament. That it's not talking about us. It's talking about the lost tribes. That's part of that new Israel only doctrine, folks, and that's where Preston is headed. And I think Peter tells us to be steadfast, therefore, beloved, looking forward to these things, be diligent to be found in Him found by him in peace without spot and blameless. And, none of us are perfect. It's his blood that makes us spotless and blameless. And the hyper predator says, no, that didn't come till AD 70. And here Peter is writing this before AD 70, talking about being spotless and blameless. And Christian doctrine taught us that it's through Jesus' sacrifice that makes us spotless and blameless. He imputes righteousness where we have none. He imputes it to us. We believe in Him. Christ, John 10, John 8, where we're going through John, where Don has it twisted. We're talking about believing in Jesus. We do His will, and we are spotless and blameless. Even though we sin, when we repent, that blood is always cleansing us of all unrighteousness. That happened before AD 70, folks. Don Preston teaches, no, that comes after AD 70. And they call it the already but not yet. And it's ridiculous. No, it was the already. When Jesus said it is finished, that's what he meant. It is finished. He fulfilled the law. He said, I came to fulfill the law and the prophets, not to destroy them. He didn't say, I came to do part of it, and I will come back in 40 years to fulfill all of it. He didn't say that. Don K. Preston says that, and Don K. Preston's disciples. But John 10:37, that that shows me, and it should show all of you. Don K. Preston is not interested in the true gospel. He will not even read that one verse, and I've proved it to you over and over and over what it actually says, and he won't even read one sentence verse. He wags his finger and at the camera and says, Jesus says, "Do not believe me for my words' sake, believe me for my works." Jesus didn't say that. He told Philip, if Philip, you've been with me all this time. You've seen the works of the Father when you see me doing the works of the Father. If I'm not doing the works, believe me for the works, not the words. If you don't want to believe it, what I say, believe what I'm doing. That still applies, folks. If we walk around saying, I'm a Christian, well, prove it, live it. Well, I'm getting dry mouthed and I've spoken enough, but I'm gonna end it here, and I appreciate you joining in. And I'm gonna my next little video will be of John chapter 5. Uh, we've read chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're going to do John chapter 5 in a few days. I may do it this weekend. You never know with me. I'm not consistent on doing video. This is something I do on my own time when I have time, and I'll do another video. I call them videos. I'm not using my camera anymore. It's my phone camera. But I'll read John chapter 5 here in a day or two. But thanks for tuning in this time, and I'll see you next time.